Hello, welcome back to Product for Product. This is Matt, and I'm joined again by my co-host Moshe. And today we're talking about product analytics, and specifically a tool called Pendo. Pendo is a tool that product managers use in order to gain insights into what their customers are doing within their products, in order to improve the product as a whole and improve the customer experience. And we're lucky enough to have our first guest on the podcast today. His name is Andrew Miller. He's a product manager and a user of Pendo. So I'd like to welcome Andrew to the show. Andrew, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, how's it going? Andrew Miller here. I've been doing product management for a little over 3 years, and my general path into product was engineering, followed by UX design, followed by product. I finally found product, and I've been very grateful to find product finally. So.
Mm-hmm. And this is Moshe here. Hey, Matt, and hey, Andrew. Really good to have you here on the show, Andrew. And excited to talk about Pendo. You know that I'm also a user of Pendo, so I'm trying not to be biased, and that's why we're bringing guests with us, even products that we know and we're familiar with. So that's why we have Andrew here today. And hopefully I will not say too much from my own background and perspective, but it might come up. So
I want to hear that too.
We'll see how that works, right? Excellent. So maybe we have quite a bit of questions for you. So we'll take turns asking you the questions, or it will be more dynamic. We'll see how it goes. Maybe the first question is maybe you can describe to our audience here what Pendo is all about related to product analytics.
Yeah, for sure. So Pendo does a lot of things, and myself and my team, there's definitely features that Pendo offers that we probably didn't use a lot of. So I think of it as kind of a Swiss Army knife of product. One of the core features that we definitely use all the time is their guides feature. So this is great for creating and iterating on user onboarding or guiding users through particular flows. Even if they're not onboarding for the first time, you can create a guide to sort of walk the user through maybe a more confusing flow or something that you're trying to draw attention to. So that's one area of Pendo that we've certainly got a lot of value out of. It's also an analytics tool. So when you integrate Pendo with your system, your tech, it's able to track page views and clicks based on how you kind of configure it with your system. So you're really able to create a lot of different metrics and monitor product usage within Pendo itself. There's another major feature that we've used, and I think they call it product updates, or at least that's what we would call it. I forget Pendo's term for it, but it's basically like on the bottom right corner of your screen, there's a little floating icon.
Yes, the Resource Center. So
yes, that's the one. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Resource Center.
Yes.
So yeah, if you have a product update and you want all of your users to know about it, but you don't want it to be super, in their face, a little bit more passive and to the side, you can make an update in the Resource Center, and that can be kind of the home for product update notes or any sort of announcements you want to make to your audience.
Cool. So how long have you been using Pendo for? You use it in one company or several companies?
We have, let's see, we got Pendo probably 2 or 3 years ago. And I wasn't using it a lot at the time. I really started using it a lot about 1 year ago. So me personally, I'd say I've been using it for about a year. And that was specifically with my cross-functional product team. So we've kind of baked Pendo into a lot of our discovery process. And so we've used it for a variety of ways in that sense. But the company that I was working for, Modern Message, became a Pendo customer maybe 3 years ago or so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have quite a bit of experience with it already, which is exactly what we're looking for here, because we want to get that type of usage by product managers, so other product managers will also understand what the benefits of a product like that. So can you tell us a bit about like some use cases that you're using it for with analytics?
Yeah, totally. So a little bit of context for how my team has been using Pendo most often is it's a crucial part of our experimentation process. So we use Pendo's guides feature to run a variety of tests and try to validate new ideas in the product without having to build it out and go through delivery and all of that. So when my team is looking at analytics, a lot of times we're looking at, is the concept that we're testing out, is it getting the type of traction that we want to see, to try to increase our confidence around it, or validate the idea. Modern Message has its own kind of separate analytics stack in addition to Pendo. So in our flow, Pendo Analytics kind of becomes this much more, I would say, nimble analytics tool for us, because we're able to kind of change things a little bit quicker, and dive into more details that are specific to an experiment that we might be running, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Where does
Yeah,
where does it fit into like the greater tech stack that the company you work for? Are there any other tools that it works alongside with, or or is there any other tool that you leverage more than Pendo, or does it complement one?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because it does so many things, there's a little bit of overlap with some other tools. Like I kind of mentioned that we have, a different stack for analytics. So there's some overlap there.
Okay.
So
yeah,
there's been kind of a process of us figuring out how does Pendo's analytics feature suite fit into our process in a way that adds value. And so we're not just, duplicating metrics, because that's not very valuable. When it comes to more of like the resource center that Moshe mentioned and guides, we don't have any other tools that duplicate that functionality. So in that sense, Pendo pretty much stands on its own in terms of our product tool set.
So would you say that they chose that product because of its ability also to do the in-app messaging, etc., or was the analytics part of it as well?
I think I'm 85% sure the reason that Pendo was chosen is for onboarding.
Okay.
I think that was a big driver for that decision.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because the first time that I found Pendo, that was 3 companies ago that I worked. And I'm talking probably 4 or 5 years ago. It's I was also looking for in-app messaging. I was looking for a way to talk with clients directly through the application. But then when I saw the analytics option, I really had an aha moment over there, and it really opened my eyes for analytic options, because the only ways that I was able to get data about how people are using the application was through either looking at the application database to see how many people registered, how many people did do specific transactions, but they were not specifically about how they use a specific feature. And the second thing I had was Google Analytics, which at the time was very limited to more like a marketing type of system. So incoming traffic, how people bounce in, bounce out, etc. But it was very detached from the actual functionality of my application, so the features. So that's where I saw in Pendo that you can actually define your own features, and you can say this little area of the screen, or this specific button, or this specific element of the screen is called feature ABC, and I can name it whatever I want. And then I can do analytics based on that. Did you use that and see value in that as well, or do you do that?
That's a great example for how we use Pendo to be, I think I used the word nimble earlier, kind of like a little bit more of a nimble analytics tool for us, because you're exactly right. Like you can define, I think it's pages and features are the two objects in Pendo system. So you can define pages and you can define features. And it's really, really versatile, and you can change it on the fly and stuff. And so for us, if we want to test something out, I'll just make up an example. If we are doing some kind of like a fake door test, and maybe we actually deploy a button to the UI, we could go tag that in Pendo, the button, and give it a feature name. And then Pendo is able to track, clicks to that specific button in a much more precise way.
Did you use it for scenarios like outside of experimentation? Just seeing, how many people are using a specific feature and whether specific features are being adopted or not, whether you have features that could be sunset or needs more attention, like that.
I think you could, and I think the team might end up doing that. In our case, we had kind of already invested in other tools that sort of solved that use case, and a lot of that was sort of like home rolled analytics stack. So we didn't end up doing a lot of that with Pendo's analytics, but it's totally possible, I think.
Yes, and it is from my experience as well. And it's really interesting that you had this homegrown one, mainly because there is that effort to put it together, but that effort probably took place before you had Pendo. And had you not had Pendo, you might have not had to develop something like that.
Yeah, totally. And I think if I'm just looking back at, the way that we've used Pendo, so one thing that I would maybe try to do differently in the future, or if I could go back in time, is, acknowledge from day one that this is a rather sophisticated tool. You're really integrating it with your system, and there's code that your developers write to deepen that integration to stream data over to Pendo, and you can maintain that over time. And there's a lot of configuration you can do in the Pendo GUI as well without writing code. So, it's a pretty sophisticated tool. It changes over time as your system and data evolves. I think one thing that we lacked a little bit is having really clear ownership in the organization over, our integration with Pendo. And I think had there been a much more clear ownership, we may have had those conversations earlier, kind of saying, hey, we're kind of rolling our own analytics stack over here, which is cool, and we like a lot about that because it's really flexible and X, Y, and Z and so on. But can we get about 80% of that with this tool Pendo that we're about to pay for? Those kinds of conversations I think could have maybe emerged if there was more clear ownership.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there's, with tools like Pendo and other tools, it's great to have them on hand and to be able to utilize them, but maybe underutilization of them is something that a lot of companies and even individuals, we all experience that with products that we use. We don't utilize them to the best of their benefit or best of our benefit, best of their ability. It sounds like that maybe you experienced some of that. I was wondering if the surveys, if the in-app surveys and sentiment analysis, did you guys do any of that?
Oh yeah, that's another one. That's a good topic. We've done tons of that. Okay. So yeah, just throwing up a survey. The segmentation capabilities in Pendo is great. So if you want to really drill down to a particular type of user and ask them a very specific question, you can do that pretty easily. So yeah, we've done tons of that.
Yeah, that's great. I think that you can get a lot of benefit from that, especially if you can get a targeted user that you're looking to survey. I did some surveying in the past, and it's hard if you don't know exactly who you're targeting, getting the right feedback and what you're really looking for, it can be very broad. And then once you start to do the analysis of it, it can get really murky, and I think that's a real benefit, to be able to develop good surveys that provide really great insight. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, and a lot of what we did was we would always end our surveys with, "Hey, can we follow up with you? Drop your email address," or you actually don't need to ask for the email address because you already have it.
Typically.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
But you can just say like, "Hey, is it okay if we follow up with you?" And they'll click the yes button or the no button. Right. And then we'll give them a call or shoot them an email and get some more qualitative to kind of round out the responses, because it just ended up being better that way.
One of the powers with their surveys, specifically the NPS for the sentiments, is that because it's not just a survey system, it's also an analytic system, and you have the segmentation. They actually took it one step farther, which I never seen in any other system. And it will be interesting to see if other system already follow suit or did something similar or whatever. And what they've done is they link the responses of the survey to specific features in the system. So they can tell you which features the promoters are using, which features the demoters are using, and which features the neutrals are using.
That's so smart.
Yes, and this way, so NPS by itself, you can have lots of people saying bad things about it, mainly because either the implementation is not the right implementation because they didn't really get the right answers from, or they didn't get to the right people, or the percentage of people that answers are not correct, or they put a marketing spin around it. And then I've seen it being fudged in the past.
Yeah.
With the system like that, you cannot really fudge it because it's all the information is coming from one source. It's all the people that are using the system. And then when you go this one step farther to actually see this information in front of you, you're like, oh, wow, it's not just a number. There is actually much more value behind it towards those features. And now I can see which features I need to pay more attention to and make them better. So the detractors will become neutral and the neutrals will become promoters. So this, I think, is quite neat, the way they've done it.
Yeah, that's really cool. NPS is interesting. I mean, I think, it's super useful and interesting. It's an imperfect tool like any other tool. It's funny to me because, you bring up NPS and like sometimes it can really polarize a room, right? Like you can hear some pretty strong opinions getting thrown around. And I kind of get it, but at the same time, it's like, well, it has its flaws like anything else, it's just a tool. So use NPS, sure, or don't use NPS. But if you do, think about how you use it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you mentioned before about the implementation of it, and related to that is also segmentation. Are you familiar with how long it took to implement Pendo? And I'm talking first about just the basic integration, and then after that, spreading it around the organization, getting people to use it. Because that's also one of the challenges, like we discussed before, of underutilization or not understanding a tool.
Yeah, I think, maybe to add a little bit more detail on, the ownership piece, and I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts too, but if I were to do it again, really what I'd want to do is have probably a more senior person, and probably a more senior product person, kind of owning the integration and working directly with engineering on that. And bringing engineering in a lot. And so they're, not only fully bought in, but really understand kind of what the goals are, and how it all works. But then there's also a lot of kind of maybe day-to-day, week-to-week little tweaking and configuration that is kind of necessary and really helps the team get more value out of the product. Like, for example, when you have 35 guides running at the same time, it helps to have someone keeping their eye on what's running. Are there conflicts? What's the ordering and the prioritization of each guide? Are they all configured in a way that's not going to blast the user with 5 guides at once? So there's a little bit of kind of like QA within Pendo, and that's probably not the best way to spend a senior person's time, because senior people are expensive. So there's also kind of a need for, and I've heard of some companies doing this, and I think it's really smart, but having, junior or APM roles kind of owning more of like day-to-day, week-to-week Pendo configuration. And they're in the tool every day. They're checking the numbers, checking to make sure everything's configured correctly. And they're also thinking about ways of getting more value out of it. And a lot of ways to get more value out of it, at least in my experience, can come from deeper data integration with your system. And that takes dev work. So, when the APMs in my hypothetical world are coming up with ideas around how to segment in this really cool way, and maybe they, throw it up the ladder to the senior person or whoever, someone, and then that person or the team can work with engineering to kind of get it prioritized. But something like that, I think would work really well, because like I said earlier, it's a sophisticated tool. So kind of thinking through how it fits in your organization and what roles are owning what pieces of it is just really helpful, I think.
Yeah, I really like that point. Is the tool itself kind of siloed within product management from a data perspective? It sounds as though the data lives with Pendo, and it may not integrate, or may not, go to a data warehouse where other people can consume it. Is that?
Oh, that's
your
a good
experience?
question. I don't know if I mentioned this already, but I just accepted a new gig. And so I'm no longer with RealPage and Modern Message, but in my final months at Modern Message, we were starting to work with our a data architect to start to pull more data streams into our warehouse. And I know that Pendo was one of them. So we were starting to look into ways you can connect Pendo to a data warehouse. And I'm pretty sure we found out how. But he was starting to look into that, and I never saw the fruit from that.
Yeah.
But pretty sure it's possible.
Yeah, it is actually. I've been in a place where we've done it, and
yes.
We didn't do it right away, not in the beginning, but we had a very strong BI team and data warehouse, and they pulled information from different resources, and then eventually we also pulled information from Pendo. We use the APIs. So basically, once you have a license to the APIs, you can get all the data on a regular basis. You just create, jobs or whatever they're doing to, pass the data, do some ETLs to clean it up or format it to the way your data warehouse needs to be formatted, and then we would use it over there. And that was actually quite. I think it is with every product analytics product out there that it is important to look to be able to get that information outside of the system. Yeah. First of all, for ownership, so you own the data, so you want to be able to have the ability to put it wherever you want. And the second thing is for things like another thing that are, the bigger picture. So how do you actually see the information coming from Pendo that is specific to the usage of people of the application, and answers to surveys if they're through the application, etc., to everything else that is going on, which could be things like even GA, like for incoming marketing information, or specific data from your database about how your users are using the application, or from Salesforce, I think we had some information coming there, and from other sources. So that is definitely possible that way. Cool. The one thing that I wanted to add to your answer, Andrew, about implementation and configuration is that one of the things that I found quite nice with Pendo is that the initial integration is quite easy. It's JavaScript you put in with the code for your license, and then you don't need a lot of information to pass in. The information that you will pass in through the integration will be useful for segmentation, of course. So the more information you can pass about your users and about the different companies, if you're using if it's a SaaS product, for example, then you can pass about different clients. You will be able to do better segmentation, but you can always edit later on. You don't have to do it right away if you don't know what these are. And then afterwards, for any of those features, feature setup, pages setup and feature setup, you don't need a developer to do that. This is that configuration that you were talking about, that you can configure things on the screen. Are you familiar with the way that this is done at Pendo?
Creating pages and features?
Yeah, basically tagging features on your application.
Yeah, we would do a little bit of that.
Yeah, so just for our listeners, because we don't really have a video here, and we're not really showing you what is it how you do that. The way that you do it in Pendo is you will say, let's say you want to tag a new button. You added a new button to the application and you want to tag it, and now this is feature called submit my form. What you will do is you will say, I want to tag in the application. This will open your application, and on top of that, it will be a Pendo interface, and then you will highlight the specific button on the screen. You will find the screen, of course. You will find the button, and then you will highlight it, and then you will say this specific CSS is called a feature submit button, and you can say whether it's only on this page or it's on all the pages. And I'm really simplifying it here for our audience, but it's quite sophisticated. You can do many different options over there how to tag those features.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a good description.
Thank you, and luckily, because I know it's that, so I was able to describe it. I can assure you that with the other products, I wouldn't be able to do that. So, so I'm kind of lucky here that I know how to do it, and I do it a lot. And this is what you referred to earlier about this configuration and being able to be more careful about how you do this configuration, because it could be also specific, you can have duplicates of the same things. You can do it wrongly. You need to be quite careful about how you do these things. But at least you don't need a developer to go and define it for you, which is really nice.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you just, you got to have someone kind of watching over it and maintaining it, because that stuff will go out of date as the product changes, and then as new people get hired and they go into Pendo and they see all these features and pages that sort of exist but maybe don't exist, and then there's duplicate pages and features, and it can become very confusing.
Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right that there need to be someone that manages it. I find it useful to have some naming conventions for everything, and then you share those naming conventions between everyone, so everyone try to use the same naming convention, so it's easier to identify what features you have tagged and stuff like that.
That makes a lot of sense.
Or what funnels you created, etc. And one of the nice things also about Pendo that it's nice to mention is that you don't have to tag a feature when you install it. You can tag a feature, let's say, 2 months after that, and it will take all the data from day one that the feature existed, and you had the integration in place. So this way,
that's kind of a magical feature. So that should be highlighted, actually. So like what Moshe just said is, if you have a feature or a page that you didn't initially tag when you integrated with Pendo, you can go tag it 6 months after you integrate.
Doesn't matter how long. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how long, because Pendo is keeping all of the behavioral click data and view data. Mm-hmm. And so it's able to just map, the selector that you tagged or whatever, the CSS button. And so it'll go back retroactively and give you analytics for that feature.
Oh, wow, that's really neat. Okay.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's very, very useful. Many times I had questions about how users are using a specific feature because I wanted to either prioritize a change to that or whatever. And then I was like, oh, I don't have a Pendo feature, I don't have a tag on it, but I can go quickly and tag it. And then I get information for the last year. And I'm like, oh, only 10 people used it in the last year. Maybe I shouldn't really do anything with that. Or
good to know.
Like
good
that.
to know.
Exactly. Yeah. So this was very useful.
So
Excellent.
I had a question. So if we call Pendo a analytics tool, what would you call Pendo having used it? Would you call it a product analytics tool, or would you call it something different?
Yeah, I usually call it a Swiss Army knife of product, but I think that the two core pillars is the analytics offering and the onboarding offering.
Okay. Yeah, because that's one of the things that I ran into, and when speaking with Moshe about this, it's all these different tools that are coming onto the market. They highlight the analytics aspect of them, but they also do a bunch of other things. So it's sometimes hard to tell what they do best. So from an analytics perspective, is there something that Pendo that you can think of? It doesn't have to be big; it could be small. Having used Pendo, is there some benefit you gain from its analytics engine that you wouldn't have gained if you didn't have Pendo?
For my analytics squad, we love writing SQL, so we definitely do a lot of our work with metrics, kind of cranking out our own SQL. And what Pendo offers us analytics-wise is, that thing that just came up that Moshe mentioned, kind of retroactively being able to look at usage across a certain area of the product that we weren't thinking of tracking before. That's something that we're not able to do with our home-rolled analytics stack.
Okay.
Not quite yet. So that in itself that's
a good example.
So powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Is there anything product analytics related that you think that should be in Pendo and they don't do yet?
Variety and data visualization is really important to me when it comes to analytics. I want to be able to tell a story with my data. And usually I do that through charts and graphs and stuff. So it's helpful to me if I can visualize things in a variety of ways, because it just, certain angles make more sense to different people. So being able to iterate on that, I don't recall there being tons of flexibility there for Pendo. So, but that kind of gets back to the, what are you really using this tool for?
Yes.
And onboarding is one thing, analytics is another thing. They're both, analytics probably more so is its own sort of vast area of practice. So it's would I expect Pendo to be able to support every single data visualization? Probably not, but that's one thing.
Do they have something? Do they have like a dashboard where it has some rudimentary bar graphs and such?
Yeah, bar graphs.
Yeah, line charts.
Line charts. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, they do have a dashboard, and you can configure your dashboard and add specific components into the dashboard. One thing that they also have is a reports page where you can create your own reports and create graphs in there, and even include them. You can say, I want to include this graph in this dashboard and something like that. And those graphs are mostly, you're right, they're mostly either a pie chart or it really also depends on the information that you're getting, if it may even make sense to show it in a pie chart, or they are like a regular line graph or stacks. They have also, I think I've seen it everywhere, those usage graph, like the day of the week usage. So something that shows how many of your users or your cohort that you're looking at the segmentation, are you using the application in a specific time of the day and something like that. So it's like a heat map. But, that's one of the challenges I've seen with generic reports or generic tools to build reports and dashboards that it's very hard sometimes to actually get to the answers that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. Meaning people say, yes, I want to get the information, but they hard for them to articulate what type of information they want to get. And then the developers will do these generic reports. Oh, you can do all of this and this and this and that. And then you don't even get to know, okay, so what now? How do I actually use it to get the things that I want to get?
Yeah.
And I think this is many years ago, before systems like Pendo or stuff like that, the only tools we had were like the BI tools or reporting tools. I used Crystal for many years. I don't know if you guys
absolutely.
That.
Yep.
And then Tableau and Power BI. And it's the same problem with all of these, that they're so sophisticated in what you can do there, that at the end of the day, you get a forest issue. Like you see all of this forest of trees with graphs and data, and then, but where are my answers? What do
you do with it? Exactly. And that's
where are the answers to my questions?
Yeah. And that's a really interesting topic. And what it maps to in my mind is sort of like this other area of data literacy, data fluency in the organization. And it's sort of like, wherever the org is along that spectrum of data literacy, there's probably going to be different tools that are a little bit better suited to complement, the level of expertise that the organization has. If you have one individual who's some data genius, that's one thing. But if you have an organization that's everyone's like, pretty good with data, and good at thinking through it and creating their own charts, and really, they do want to explore and they know how to explore. That's a totally different scenario. So there's all of these different, kind of organization configurations along the data literacy spectrum.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And everybody goes back to Excel eventually. So, right. So,
yeah, exactly.
So many people live on Excel. It's a lot of the things that, I've encountered in my career. People use tools, whether it is Power BI, whether it's something like Pendo, they get the data and they extract it and they start doing stuff outside of it.
One other question I have is related to other products, product analytics. Are you familiar, or have you used any other products other than Pendo and your, house built product?
Yeah, so I've done a demo with AppQues, which competes with Pendo's onboarding feature suite.
But not with their analytics.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And then on the analytics side, there's, I don't know how many competitors there are.
Yeah.
Did you use any of
Mixpanel,
them, or
Heap, any of those?
Tons. I know that LogRocket's trying to do something similar in terms of like behavioral tracking.
What's the name again?
LogRocket.
Have you used them, or are you just familiar with them?
Yeah, we use them. That's a really cool product. It's not I wouldn't say it's a direct Pendo competitor. Their kind of core offering is they do screen recordings of every session.
Like Hotjar.
Yep. Mm-hmm. They're kind of building. I talked with the PM over there maybe 6 months ago, and they were. It sounded like they were investing in analytics as well. Yeah, we used Mixpanel a few years ago. And we have our own kind of homeworld analytics stack as well that I mentioned. So
they moved from Mixpanel to Pendo? That was the case?
Mixpanel kind of went away, and it was, I think one reason Mixpanel didn't stick for us is kind of back to that same organizational conundrum I was mentioning earlier. There wasn't really clear ownership, and there wasn't really clear alignment between product and engineering. So like, it also kind of gets back to what stage is the company at. We were pretty small at the time, so probably 40, 50 people. And if you're going to use a tool like Mixpanel and the company's that small, you better have engineering fully bought in on something like that,
I see. Okay. That's great. That's good to know. Yeah. Okay, cool. The last questions we have here are about the company itself. If you have ever dealt with them, and you can tell the audience about them, about the customer support or customer success. How are they?
Oh yeah, they're great across the board. So I know we have we had a standing call with our account manager over at Pendo, I think once a month. So yeah, it was a few different people over the span of 3 years, but they were always available. They might not have every answer to every question, but they usually went and got it for us if it was more technical. Yeah, they're all good people, and they have Todd Olson kind of leading the ship over there, and he's very much a product person himself. Literally wrote the book on product-led orgs. So
I need to read the book.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good book.
Okay, cool.
There's some great nuggets in there. So yeah, I think they're a really cool company because they are just through and through product. It's like very much their DNA, So I'm a fan for sure.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. They're based out of Raleigh, North Carolina, which I think that's an interesting place to be. It's kind of outside of the San Francisco typical startup.
Yeah, so there's research triangles over there, and there's some other. There's a pretty big tech presence in Research Triangle, and then they have some interesting universities close by, and I think they're making a big investment in the area, which is cool. I can appreciate a company that's really trying to invest in their city and their local community as well.
Yeah, I think North Carolina State is university is in Raleigh, I believe, and they have a pretty big analytics program there. So
cool.
Yeah, so I think they might be
good feeder of talent.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and hey, all three of us are not from Silicon Valley, so there is a lot of talent also outside. So it's really great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Toronto's up and coming, right? So I think Atlanta is too. So
I thought Toronto is Silicon Valley.
Yeah, that's right.
It's still a bit.
It's a colder version.
Still a bit far.
One with snow.
It's the frozen. It's a frozen one.
Yeah.
I think these were all the questions I had. Matt, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, this has been great. This has been really beneficial. Thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on. This has been really, really helpful for us and hopefully for the listeners. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice hanging out with you guys. Anytime, always down.
Where do our listeners can catch you if they want to chat with you or ask you questions about Pendo or about anything else?
Yeah, so LinkedIn's the best platform. You can find me on there, Andrew Miller, and just send me a request. I have my Calendly link in my bio, so I take a couple calls a week with product people from all over the world that are really smart and really interesting. So I can't wait to meet more of you. So,
well, excellent. Thank you so much, and really appreciate it, Moshe. It's been a pleasure, and Andrew, again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And we'll talk to everybody next time on Product for Product.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.